Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first Planning, Building, and Environmental Committee meeting of 2018. I know I pass on from all members of council and the mayor. Wish that you all had a good Christmas and a New Year, and we look forward to a wonderful 2018. Tonight we have regrets from Councillor Rayner, who is much warmer than we are, but he did send regrets. And to everyone here and to anyone listening, we thank you all for your patience over the holiday season with regard to the collection of waste and recyclables. It was challenging, but then so was the weather. And it showed even last Friday that plows and electricity were subject to Mother Nature and that some of you were inconvenienced, but we appreciate that you were careful on the roads, patient with the garbage, and withstood the lack of electricity for some people out there. But to that end, we applaud and thank all of our staff. And I know the mayor was on the phone with different agencies and was calling. Well, I was on the phone with him on Friday night at 11:30, so we were making sure that you were all minimized in your inconvenience. Anyway, so down to business. I am Joanne Chichok, and I'm the chair for tonight's meeting. And I'll now be asking the members around the table if there is any wish to change the order of items on the agenda. Seeing none, then I'll ask for a disclosure of pecuniary interest and/or conflict. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to disclose a conflict of interest. Potential family member might want to get into the French fry business. That's item P02-18.
So you'll be declaring a conflict and with not being part of that discussion. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Any others? No? Okay. Okay, so we'll move into the public meetings under the Planning Act, the first part of this meeting, and the first public meeting is a meeting to consider a zoning bylaw amendment by 2090754 Ontario Inc. The participant is Owens. The Planning Act requires in section 34 sub 12 that before a zoning bylaw amendment can be passed, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect to the amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the amendment to the Township of West Lincoln's bylaw. At this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by committee and staff in their considerations. The Planning Act also requires, through section 34 sub 13, that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submission to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council for the Township of West Lincoln to the Ontario Municipal Board. Madam Clerk, if you could advise as to the dates and method on which the public were given notice.
Proper notice was given by way of individual notice dated December 6, 2017.
Thank you very much. And according to my notes, Madsen Yule, you're a month late. You should have been here for Yuletide. Anyway, Madsen Yule will explain the purpose and reason for the zoning bylaw. Welcome, Madsen.
Okay. An application for rezoning has been made on behalf of Brian Owens for a temporary use bylaw to temporarily allow 2 mobile food trucks to operate on a 0.15 hectare property zone development located between 6615 and 6633 Regional Road 20, Lot 21, for up to a maximum of 3 years. The applicants are here today. The first food truck will be 6 meters by 2 meters, and the second food truck will be 12.2 meters by 2.4. The property is surrounded by predominantly vacant lands to the north, residential lands to the east and south, and a newly built school to the west. Council shall be satisfied that the proposed use is temporary and will not create detrimental effects to the surrounding area. Upon expiry of the temporary use bylaw, uses permitted by that bylaw must stop and cannot be considered as non-conforming uses unless addressed by a permanent zoning application by then. The Township zoning bylaw allows for temporary use bylaws to be passed by council for a 3-year term with potential of 1 3-year extension. The property is located within the Northwest Quadrant Secondary Plan, and under the Secondary Plan, the property is designated commercial. Following the 3-year temporary zoning, it is expected that this lot will be zoned to commercial and a permanent commercial use will be established. The region's common objectives include maximizing the use of existing land to support growth in a compact and efficient manner. This would allow the lands to be rezoned to temporary use to provide services to the community while the applicants proceed with subdivision and site plan applications to accommodate a more permanent use. The building department provided comments in regards to the food trucks being exempt from compliance with the Ontario Building Code, and thus not subject to requirements for permits, and that any material alteration to the food trucks to make them immovable may result in a necessity for conformance. Public Works had no objections to this application. The region stated that they have no objections to this application, that they are satisfied with the entrances on the property being used for the proposed food trucks. Overall, a recommendation report will be prepared by township staff following input from today's meeting and will be presented at a future committee meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Yule. Okay, is the applicant or authorized agent present wishing to speak to this item? You're good? Okay. That's always faith in our staff for having done a thorough report, so there you go. Thank you, Mr. Owens. Public submissions. Are there anyone here, is there anyone here that wishes to make an oral submission or written submission regarding the zoning bylaw amendment? I'd stress that this may be the only public meeting held with regard to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public which would like to make comments and or provide written comments, they should state them or present them now, as the OMB may not consider comments made during any other council or committee meetings. So I'm going to ask again, is there anyone here wishing to make comment with regard to the application for zoning bylaw amendment by 209-0754 Ontario Inc.? Seeing none, I'm going to confine this to table. Are there any members of committee that have comment they wish to make now? Great. Seeing and hearing none, I will say that that this is a technical meeting that is being considered tonight by Planning Committee. For the recommendation, a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future Planning Committee and Council. Please be advised that once the Planning Committee and Council have made their decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, a notice of its passing will be circulated with an appeal period. There is an attendance sign-in sheet located on the table near the exit doors, which we would ask you all to sign. Please ensure that when you're signing the attendance sheet, if you're interested in this particular application, that you place a check mark in the column marked 209-0754 Ontario Inc. And let me just further say that therefore people who are interested in observing council and or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus miss the opportunity to attend meetings. It is suggested that you watch the township's website for posting of agendas to review items that will be discussed at council or committee. The agendas for meetings are posted on the township website at 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting. Additionally, meetings scheduled are also noted on the website for public to view. If you wish to receive notices by mail, it is suggested that you include your email address with your mailing address and your phone number on the attendance sign-in sheet. Thank you. This public meeting is concluded at 6:44 p.m. Wonderful. Our second meeting for this evening is a public meeting to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Yanka Mihalchik. By the time this is over, I might get it right. I apologize. The Planning Act requires that in Section 34, Sub 12, that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, Council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the amendment to the Township of West Lincoln zoning bylaw. At this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendment, and any comments received tonight will be taken into account by staff, committee, and council in their consideration. The Planning Act further requires, under Section 34, Sub 13, that committee and council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of committee or council for the Township of West Lincoln to the Ontario Municipal Board. Madam Clerk, could you please advise of the dates and notice to the public?
Yes. Proper notice was given by way of individual notice dated December 6, 2017.
Thank you. I understand from here that Mr. Treble, you'll be explaining the purpose of this zoning amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd be happy to. This is an application for zoning bylaw amendment, and it affects lands described as part of Lot 22 and 23, Concession 5, in the former township of Caister. There is a reference plan on the property as well, and it's referred to as Parts 2 and 3 on the reference plan 30R1705. And the property is at 9795 Goodale Road and is about 1.96 acres in size. There is a drawing I believe we can put up on the screen. So 9795 is an irregular shaped property surrounded by Goodale Road to the south, Westbrook Road to the west, and Bismarck Road, Silver Street, Regional Road 65, whatever name you want to affectionately call it, to
You
the
forgot
north.
Whitechurch. Whitechurch, I think some
Whitechurch?
people call it Whitechurch.
And Binbrook, maybe?
And
I
Binbrook,
don't know if
yeah.
Binbrook comes out that far.
But it's okay.
Anyway, so it's take your pick. Anyway, the lands are in an agricultural area of the township of West Lincoln. So the regional official plan, so the Region of Niagara official plan, identifies the lands as good general agricultural lands, and the township zoning bylaw, or sorry, township official plan does likewise. They're good general agricultural lands, and that terminology relates to designations of the township, or sorry, of the provincial policy statement. The other side of Westbrook Road is the city of Hamilton, and the designation on that side of the road is a little more complicated in the sense that all of the lands on the west side in the city of Hamilton are actually in the green belt in this particular location. So they are identified as what's known as protected countryside on the west side of Westbrook Road, which has a higher and stronger level of protection than even our good general agricultural policies on the Niagara side. The other thing you'll probably notice from the drawing, especially the one on the left-hand side of the screen, is that there are quite a number of non-agricultural uses, or certainly small holdings, in this area. On the West Lincoln side of the road, or of the development, on the east side of Westbrook Road, there was in fact a rural cluster that was created by the township of West Lincoln and the region back in the 1990s. And as I understand it, some of the lots fronting Westbrook Road were in fact created partly because of the rural cluster designation that was added to the area. This particular property is to the north of Goodale Road, is a bit different, irregular in shape, but it's clear that most of this area to the south of Bismarck Road or Silver Street is has certainly a non-agricultural component to it. And there are policies in both regional official plan and township official plan that allow for non-agricultural uses within the agricultural designation of the township where they do not impact agriculture, either agriculture on site or agriculture on adjacent lands. And that's the policy set that the township is evaluating this application against tonight. So, Madam Chair, we have done a policy review. We've identified that the agricultural policies are generally limited in their impact on this particular property. The nature of the proposal that we're dealing with is a property that has a single-family dwelling with a driveway onto Goodale Road and an existing accessory building of approximately 200 square meters in area fronting onto Westbrook Road. And my understanding is internal to this building there is one hoist in the building at present. And you can see from even the air photography a graveled parking area that is associated with that building and structure. So the application that's before us is to take the building and add to this property a home industry as a permitted use, which would allow for the home industry provisions of the township zoning bylaw to apply, and that permits up to 2 additional employees inside a building that is 75 square meters in area to be used for non-agricultural purposes. This particular application is an auto repair establishment, and I believe there will be some services available to the farm community as well. A couple of exceptions proposed as part of this. One is to do with the location of storage, and you'll see that it's been depicted on the plan that's on the screen and before us tonight, and also to deal with the size of the building being in excess of the 75 square meters that the bylaw, as currently written, contemplates for a home industry. So, Madam Chair, this application was circulated to all of the neighbors. There was one item of correspondence in the package. I'm anticipating that individual's in attendance, but if not, I can certainly speak to the correspondence in a bit more detail. And at that point, maybe I'll just end it here and we can answer questions as they arise.
Thank you, Mr. Treble. And yes, at the appropriate time where it's opportunity for public to speak, if there's no one here representing that individual, you can speak to it then.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, is the applicant or an authorized agent here wishing to speak to this item? Mr. Rivers,
Madam Chair,
for the first time in 2018. The podium, please.
Nice to be here again. Somewhere on here is my presentation. Desktop, camera, computer, local disk, there we are,
there a secret
local
here?
disk. And
Oh, okay.
which of these is Thank you. Madam Chair, as
Presentation, order.
I laid out in my planning justification report, which is attached to the material that you have, with regards to the provincial policy statement, this proposal does not significantly impact the surrounding agricultural lands, and it meets the general intent of the provincial policy statement, in my opinion. The region, their concerns is that will not hinder or negatively impact surrounding agricultural and non-agricultural uses. It does not necessarily conform to the regional policy. However, it's an undersized lot, and in light of other agricultural operations area that are common in Niagara. The region is not opposed to the proposed zoning amendment to permit the home industry with limited outdoor storage from either provincial or regional policy perspective. In terms of the township's policies, it's permitted if it remains small in scale, remains secondary, it's compatible with and does not hinder the surrounding agricultural uses. And this lot is, as it's Mr. Treble has pointed out, it's irregular in shape, it's bounded on 3 sides by roads, and is literally unsuitable for farming. There have been a number of issues raised in correspondence that you have received. These issues are, in my opinion, dealt with in a number of different mechanisms that are open and available to the township, and in the potential zoning bylaw amendment that is in the staff report. In terms of site plan approval, it can be minor. The proposal they use limited to an existing 200 square meter accessory building. The outdoor storage of licensed vehicles will only be permitted in the west, or behind the west wall of the accessory building on the existing gravelled area, and there's no greater than 360 square meters. bylaw permits 3 employees. In this case, the proponent only needs 2 employees. There'd be 2 employees plus the owner, which is satisfies the zoning bylaw requirements for the property. And there will be washrooms in the accessory building with adequate sewage disposal capacity. In terms of the zoning restrictions on the property, there were concerns about signage. Zoning covers signage on the property, as does the township's sign bylaw. There were concerns about the size of the operation and its potential for expansion. The size is definitely going to be limited through the zoning bylaw amendment and through site plan control. Any expansion would require coming back before this council and requesting permission again. The owner, the proponent, in my discussions with them, does not anticipate any further expansion of the use. There were concerns about screening, particularly the provision of trees and fencing. And again, through the site plan control process and through zoning, there are requirements, particularly for fencing and where it can and cannot go. And certainly through the site plan control process, we anticipate providing additional fencing and screening of the property. Again, it spoke to the number of employees, 2 plus the owner. Vehicle storage area, the images that Mr. Treble put up indicated where the vehicle storage would go, and in discussions with my client tonight, he's quite content to fence that area appropriately. And there were also concerns about the continuation of the use, and the use goes with the bylaw, it doesn't go with the owner. So wanted to make it clear to the neighbors that yes, this use may continue, but it will continue under the same restrictions that the current applicant would have to abide by. There were other concerns as well. One was refuse collection. Refuse collection is certainly an issue, and there were concerns about where refuse bins would go. Ultimately, it's a responsibility of the Ministry of Environment and Energy to control refuse from this type of use. And my client is quite happy to have the storage bins within the enclosed fence east of the west wall of the building. Hours of operation. Again, we're looking at as normal business, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, occasional Saturday. The nature of the business is that people occasionally need their cars fixed on a Saturday morning, and occasionally there's likely to be use would go past the 5 o'clock. Again, it's the nature of the way business operates. Property value. Property value is, as I've said many times to this council, is not a planning issue. So I'm going to avoid addressing that. I'm going to at least try to stay within something I'm professionally qualified for. Traffic, impact or increased traffic. I anticipate that to be minimal. 2 employees. It's a 3-bay garage. There's not going to be a lot of traffic coming to this this business. There was concern about vehicles running up and down Westbrook Road, being tested out after they've been worked on. It's more likely that they'll use which name should we apply?
Binbrook Road.
Binbrook Road. We'll go with Binbrook Road. Running somebody else's vehicle up and down a gravel road is not the way to go. Odor and noise. Noise is controlled through the township's bylaws and through the provisions of the Ministry of Environment and Education, or Environment and Energy. Odor, again, is a issue for the Ministry of Environment. There was concern about floor drains and requirement for oil separators. Again, Ministry of Environment and Energy concern. There is not currently a floor drain in the accessory building. and an oil separator is not required unless there is a floor drain. If there's an oil spill, it's going to go onto a solid concrete floor. The operator is going to want that cleaned up right away, and we'll do it. In terms of groundwater contamination, this is not a significant groundwater recharge area as identified by the Niagara Coastal Conservation Authority. Hazardous materials, again, concern of the Ministry of Environment. And fire hazard is something that's dealt with through the Ontario Building Code. Just want to give you an idea of what the current premises operated by Roger is. Very clean, very neat, no trash around. There's the bin that's likely to be similar to what will be on this property. Not a lot of cars parked in and around the property. This is what Mr. Young and Mr. Rogers.
Yanka. I got that
You
one.
you Dutch people get
What are
me
you
with this
talking
every time.
Oh, okay.
This is his current residence. Again, very neat, very tidy. He's going to be living on this property. You know, he wants to have a decent place to live. Again, there's an aerial view of the current residence. Very neat, very tidy, very well looked after. That, Madam Chair, members of the committee, is my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rivers, and I'm sure that in due course, members of committee will want to ask questions. I'm going to ask if there are members of the public wishing to make comment or address this item. Sir,
I'm across the street from him.
if you could come to the microphone. We've taped, I apologize, I didn't say this at the beginning of the meeting, but all of our meetings are taped now, so if anyone wishes to replay them at some time in the future, they're available on our website. But in order to make the broadcast clear, we have to ask you to speak at the microphone. And while I've got the floor again, anyone who has a PDA or cell phone, if they could turn them off, that would be appreciated for the benefit of all those here in the audience. Thank you. So if you could just give us your name.
Yep, it's Gary Claremont, Westbrook Road,
Oh, and your address, sorry.
3174 Westbrook Road.
Thank you.
I spoke to Roger and Al. They know my concerns. One of the concerns I thought of later on was our street, Binbrook, I should say Westbrook Road, is 80 kilometers an hour.
Okay.
And across the street, it's 60 on the east of the Binbrook Road, or north of the Binbrook Road.
Oh, yes.
Now, we have a lot of young kids that go to school, and nothing wrong with Rogers, but if people are fixing cars or going up and down that road at a slower speed, we should get that reduced to 60 kilometers an hour. We've been after that for years to get it done. And so far, I haven't even spoke to him once. But so far, I guess it's not going to happen. We heard it might happen. I don't know if the mayor knows anything about that or not. Is it going to be done?
It is a boundary road. It is shared by ourselves and the city of
Brenda
Hamilton.
says it's up to you to do it.
Brenda?
Johnson.
Oh, the counselor from Hamilton, yes, I've met with her before.
Friend of
Okay.
mine.
Good. All
Oh,
right.
she says she wrote a letter. Oh,
She does say that a lot out that way,
That's
in the
right.
Binbrook section of that road.
That's right,
Yes,
yeah.
okay.
but anyway, my concern was what you discussed already, and there seems to be an answer with my five, was the cars out in front. In fact, I got it here. I'll look it up. That,
They're on your shirt.
Okay, the property maintenance, well, we see what Roger's going to do. The operating the garage on weekends, the storage on the property of a few cars, and the gross area of the floor, the garage, which is not going to be increased. But we also have to do something about the speed. Because down the street, they built a nursery, which turned out to be a garage. They do 100 miles an hour down there, and I don't want it to happen on this side. So it has to be reduced somehow. And that's my major concern really is the young kids, because I brought up two kids there. And It's not a place in fact, I can't even walk my dog on that road anymore because it's too dangerous. Anyway, that's my complaint was, they say they're going to follow what these were and the speed restrictions.
Thank you.
Sure, comment.
If you- I'm sorry, I'm supposed to tell him that.
Thank you, Madam.
Okay,
Madam
I
Chair.
I just direct traffic.
It's actually, to you, Madam
Oh,
Chair,
on my
maybe you
road?
maybe you can clarify as well. We are, I know prior to the new year changing, we are having our staff relook at all intersections in the hamlets of. to
That
do
is
a stu-
correct.
To do a study for all the hamlets and the speeds, so maybe that might help this gentleman once the study gets, obviously comes back to committee here, Madam Chair. So if you want to maybe just kind of help me out and.
I don't want to interrupt you, but there has been a lot of accidents on
No, and I've-
Westbrook and Benbrook Road.
I have, yeah, and I've grown up down the road there, so
Oh, you know
I
what I'm
know, I know the area very, very well. So, and like I said, there we have went to staff, and they are doing a study in all the hamlets, all the stop signs, and the clusters
Mm-hmm.
of homes, and our staff's supposed to be getting back to us. So I don't know if our chair would like to maybe just.
No, I think you put it well, Counselor. We are looking at that. We don't want to do one-offs. It's not about going out and, as soon as we start changing speed limits because
Well-
of conditions, then hang on, I'm going to let you have the floor back, and then when you have it, we're going to stop talking. The conditions are not unique to any one area, and so that's what we're looking for, is what commonalities are there throughout the township that require us to look at things like putting up flashing signs like we do further down the road to the east, and what issues besides those brought to us by the Niagara's Finest.
Okay, and my other thing is the traffic on Westbrook Road.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned farm equipment. School buses and farm tractors and all that, they highball down there like 100 miles an hour. And they're the worst offenders there are. Now, Roger
tractors.
might be doing some repairs with them, I'm not sure. I don't want them testing on that road.
Okay,
that
I'm
and
going
the
to
tires.
bring order back to this table. We have one speaker, and we'll, if you want to speak, come to the microphone, and I think we're going to hold our comments till we get to the end of a speaker so that we don't have
Well,
this
that's my
repartee.
objections there. you know,
Okay.
My concerns, I should say.
Sure.
That's all, unless you want me to sing.
No, it's okay.
You're lucky.
But if you come back to council, we'll let you sing "O Canada."
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay. Are there other members of the public wishing to make comment with regard to this application? Sir? If you'll come to the microphone, state your name and address, and we'll be happy to hear what it is you have to say.
All right, I'll be a little less windy than Gary, and I hope you can hear the voice. My name's Brian Ferguson. I live at 3164 Westbrook. Actually, I talked to Roger once. He called, and he knows where I stand. We're 100% against what we're here for. From the presentation earlier, I heard a lot of what it won't impact the agriculture. Not once did I hear it's not going to affect people in the surrounding area, our homes. Been there 20 years, or almost 20 years now. I've invested just over $250,000 upgrading my property in addition. My neighbors are around us to do the same thing. We've got another guy, Steve, who's bought a house and he's in the midst of paying. God knows what he's going to pay to fix that one up, but he's spending the money. If I wanted to move into a neighborhood next to a garage, originally I'd have moved down to Barton Street in Hamilton. We're out in the country. We're going to have to put up with air guns. We're going to be putting up with impact hammers. We're going to be putting up with tow trucks dragging vehicles in. I hear a lot of, we want to do this, and I'm not saying anybody's a liar, but at this stage of the game, we're going to be told what we need to hear to get what we need done. End of subject. My opinion is there's three things. There's his version. Never mind that. Yeah, 100% against this. I don't see any good in this. This is going to turn into nothing more than something that we have to police. This bylaw, the MOE is going to be, they take care of this. But who's responsible for calling it when the problems start? I don't say if they start, it's when they're going to start, because this is going to turn stupid. I know it is. We've dealt with a neighbor before who had cars on the property. It was a junkyard. It was like living next to Sanford and Son. I don't plan on putting up with any of this nonsense. So that's where we stand in my family. I know you got a couple of letters. There was one guy that I thought was here. I'm not sure if he is or not, but that's where we're at. Good.
Thank you very much for coming forward. Other speakers wishing to address this item, please come forward. Your name and address.
Marley Ferguson, 3164 Westbrook Road.
Thank you.
I wanted to just ask a question about the PowerPoint presentation and how the impact on property value wasn't addressed because it wasn't in the scope of the planning committee. But that's definitely a concern as a resident right across the street, is how that's going to affect our property value when there is an auto mechanic shop right across the street when it's currently just residential in the country. So who's responsible, or what recourse is there if there is an impact on our property value?
I believe what Mr. Rivers said was that that property value is not within the scope of the planning decisions or the authority he has as a professional to state. So he didn't say there wasn't.
I wasn't.
No, I'm just saying that I think I heard him say that that wasn't within the scope of his professional opinion as a planner.
Okay. So whose scope is that within?
I was going to you, Mr. Treble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assessments of properties is established by the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, which is an arm's length body that looks at everybody's property. I think they do it on like a 5-year rotation where they inspect everybody's property and determine what your values are, and will determine whether there is an increase in value on this property because of a business, if it was to be approved, and whether that has any impacts on adjacent lands. It's really not anything that this township has control over. Once the value is established, then this township establishes a tax rate, and that's how taxes are collected. But the actual value of the land is established by this arm's length body. What I can say, Madam Chair, is that in theory, and I know this has been tested with the Ontario Municipal Board, in theory, if something is considered to be good planning, it should not have a negative impact on property values. So, you know, it's kind of the two go together. Good planning should not have any negative impact.
And as a resident, if it does have an impact, then what as a resident? Because it's up to the township to make the planning decision.
So in that case, the MPAC, which is a provincial body that values your property, periodically does do a reassessment. I think we were just through one. And what you would do is you would take your new assessed value and you would do an appeal to your assessment and say that my property is not worth as much as you're assessing it for taxes. And that would do a change for the value of taxation. But that's the only thing that we as a municipality would be involved in, what your property's valued at for taxation. So you could appeal your assessment for the value that it's on the property for the calculation of your taxes, as Mr. Treble has pointed out. But as far as any change to the valuation of your property on the market, we would follow good planning, and if we did the job correctly, there should be no impact on you, and there should be no worry on your part. Okay? Is there anyone else here this evening wishing to speak to this particular application? Sir.
Peter Mindesma, 1793 Westbrook Road. I have got no objections to this. The former owner always had it tidy. He had a business that was shut down, but we had no complaints about it at all. And I still don't have any complaints.
Thank you, Mr. Mindesma. Anyone else? Because this is somewhat of a structured type of meeting where anything we say or do here is recorded so that if there is any appeals to the Ontario Municipal Board or the like, we're pretty formal about this part of the meeting, and that's what I was trying to bring it back to some rigor. This is the part of the meeting where it's your chance to speak, and all I'd like to do is stress that this is the public's chance to speak. And anyone wishing to come forward with a comment, and written or oral, should bring those forward now, as the OMB will only consider them made during this meeting. And this may be the only public meeting with regard to this application. So anyone wishing to speak are required to come forward to the microphone at this time. And seeing no others, I'm going to confine the discussion to table now. Thank you all for your comments and participation. Members of committee, is there anyone here wishing to, sorry, I'm going to make sure I have a speakers list, sorry. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Treble. Could you give us some background on this structure? Apparently, it was built, there was a business, it wasn't legal, it was shut down. My understanding, property now is for sale. Difficult time trying to sell the property. This applicant wants to bring a business back, but nothing complies. So I just wondered if you could give us some background and some history.
Mr. Treble, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure I can answer all of the questions, although I do believe I did see at one point that the former property owner was here. So it may be that we need to pull him up to the podium. The property has existed in its current form for a long time. I'm not sure when the realignment of Silver Street would have happened in this particular location, and I think it looks like there's been a further realignment. So there's actually quite a wide width of road allowance that looks like it's this property and has been maintained as part of this property, but is not actually owned by it. The accessory building in question, I presume, would have been built as an accessory residential building because the zoning at the time that this building would have been constructed did not allow for any sort of commercial use. And I'm only surmising it does have a hoist in it, but any sort of personal building could have a hoist in it. So exactly what the intent is there, I don't know. We'd have to ask Alex, who's in the room. What has happened in the recent past, I know the property has been for sale for a long time. In the year 2016, 2017, township staff were working on the new zoning bylaw. There had been a number of discussions at that point with the property owner or with the owner of the property about potential future uses going forward. And that was about the same time as the property was working on their guideline for permitted uses in the agricultural area, which did start to identify ways that you could consider allowing for add-on farm value and additional type businesses in the agricultural area where they do not impact agriculture. So value-added and on-farm diversified terms started to appear in the 2016 kind of window at about the same time as we were working on our new bylaw. And so the concept of a home industry became a concept that was added into the township's official plan and the township zoning bylaw. The irony in all of this is the property was zoned agricultural in the old provisions, which did not allow for those businesses. Then the province changed the rules to allow for some businesses in the agricultural area, and the zoning flipped to rural residential. So the permitted uses were in the agricultural piece. However, in staff's opinion, this is probably one of the properties that's easiest to argue has limited agricultural impacts. So that's kind of the irony of the zoning piece. But unfortunately, in terms of the exact history of how this building got established, how the hoist was installed, and those kind of things, which may be part of the councillor's question, I can't really speak to those. But the owner is here. The current owner, former owner, is here, so he can perhaps provide some clarity on that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
Through you, Madam Chair, if it's okay, and if the owner's willing to give us some more background on that, could he speak, please?
No, sure. Come forward for clarity's sake, sure. You're still the current owner?
Correct.
Okay. No, it's okay. I was a little confused, but go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alois Mihilcic, and we are the owners of this property for the last 22 years. And there was some unfortunate things that happened to us, which in 2000, we actually asked all the neighbors if they would be okay to run one-man shop, because we had my late wife said either family or business. So in 1996, I shut down the shop on Rainy Street, and I went to work for other people. And because of the fourth child arrived in 96, so for a little while it was okay for me to be away, but then we got a lot more work with a big family, and I built the shop as a hobby shop and as a storage unit. But it turned out that it became necessary for me to be more around the house. And when we started, we actually asked for permission to run a one-man shop. In 2000, we have all the paperwork for that. We've been around all the neighbors, including Brian Ferguson and all the others, and they were okay at the time. And what happened, this was before we knew my wife was terminally ill, and that was in June and July that we did this of 2000, and in November she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in fourth stage, and we lost her in less than 3 months. So we knew the stand of the township at the time that they are not going to allow even if I officially apply for rezoning. So I went and did what I had to do, because I wasn't going to go on government support to raise my 4 children. And so I went and took a chance and ran the shop on my neighbor's signatures until it came to a head, which is obviously being one-man operation, sometimes you get a bit overwhelmed, and maybe you slack off a little bit, and maybe that's what triggered my good neighbor off. And I'm sorry for that. I asked him afterwards when I was confronted with that I don't have the proper zoning, and he told me that he's okay with it, and he told me that there was a couple of things that bothered him, and I was just sorry that he didn't come to me and say, listen, this is what I don't like, and maybe you should do it differently, and it would be no problem. We wouldn't be standing here at the moment, which, in hindsight, things are the way they are. So I was confronted with another thing that we had to look after my new wife's health, and thank God she's in great shape now. But that was the decision that I actually didn't pursue what Roger is trying to do now. And I thought that the actual property lends itself really well to something like this, to a small scale, a shop that is actually quite useful for the neighborhood. I was a bit limited because I was only a Volkswagen guy, and you can only take so many things on. But I'm grateful to everybody, including Brian Ferguson and whoever's against it, that they allowed me to raise my children, and I'm very proud of them. The last one is finishing the 4th year of forensics. So what else can I say? I've achieved my life goal, and if somebody can achieve his, it's all up.
So, Mr. Michalczyk, you built the accessory building as a shop,
As a hobby shop so I can, play with my own stuff. I've been in this since I was 12 years old, and so it was not intention to make it that way, but the necessity became, and I was actually I think it was one of the aldermen that I phoned in 2013 when I got the letter in the mail. And it turned out that I helped her out on the side of the road because she was in a snowstorm with her granddaughter. And it was one of the aldermen here, and she says, she blasted me for not asking for permission. And I said, wait a minute. I did everything possible that I could, but all the laws at the time were so that you couldn't do what it's possible now. But to Roger's application, he's more than willing to do anything that neighbors would ask him to, and he's just that type of person. And I understand everybody else's concern down the road, but that's why all these bylaws are governing and telling them this is the limitation. It's no expansion. It's no, it stays with the whoever's going to live there, but they can't sell it separately. They can't rent it out. They cannot do any of these things.
So I'm going to stop you there and thank you for the honesty with which you've shared the history of the build of that property with us. And we share.
It's up to you guys.
We share your life here, and thank you for that honesty. I believe that our planning director has said that the zoning changes we will have to work through, and that any potential owner will have to work through those. And the process may be a little different now because of the rezonings the town has gone through in that time. So we'll leave that to Councillor Bell or others' direct questions. But I think you've answered the history on how the hoist got there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, just a couple more quick ones for Mr. Trouble.
Sure.
I do have concerns dealing with the hours of work, Monday to Friday. I don't have a problem with. Saturdays, hopefully be limited half days, as most mechanical shops are. Definitely no Sundays. The traffic and the speed, well, because of where it is, on 65 and on Westbrook Road, they are two very busy intersections. And as was stated, we've got a couple of different speed limits there, and we are working on the south side of Westbrook Road to get it lowered, but it is what it is right now. One of my concerns is repairs to farm equipment. I don't have a big issue automotive, light truck, pickups and whatnot. I do have a little bit of concern, maybe more than a little bit, dealing with farm equipment. It's not the small tractors anymore. These things are massive. And I do realize they need to be repaired. I would be more preferred if you had a pickup truck and went to them instead of them coming to you. I'd love to see you fix and look after our agricultural. One of the other things, I guess, is I've seen your properties, and I understand you do want to, and you do keep clean properties, but I look at the picture here that I'm looking at, and would be on the east side of the structure. It looks like a small junkyard. And I guess that's one of my concerns is you're going to get busy and you're going to have clients that their cars have seen better days and they're going to want to leave them there, and you may want to buy a couple for parts, whatever. I don't want it becoming a junkyard.
Councillor Bell, if you could just real quick, because you're drifting off and we can't show our opinion here. We're supposed to be asking questions.
But I'm getting to the point, and the point being is, to Mr. Trouble, can all these issues be dealt with through site plan?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, things like hours of operation can be spoken to in the site plan agreement. It's better there than in the zoning. I think the cars that we're looking at, if it's the air photography on page 61 of the council package, that would be the current owner. And so in discussions we've had at the staff level, we propose to put in place in the site plan agreement as well, provisions to talk about outside storage and control that so that it has limitations in terms of how much area is available and how it needs to be concealed and whatnot. And that will help us with some teeth too when it comes to the enforcement provision. Having a site plan agreement is stronger than zoning on its own. So staff are proposing both site plan and zoning for that reason, to give us some
So
extra
once
teeth.
this technical meeting and public meeting are over, the technical report tonight, you'll be gathering all of those comments about outside storage, frontage, screening, et cetera, and any of the concerns that come from council or the public, and those will be included in your recommendation report.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know it took a while to get there, but that was my basic question.
Sorry,
So
I was
thank you
getting
for that.
prompted by our
Yep.
staff over here,
No
so
problem.
you know what they're like. Anyway, Councillor Trombetta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few comments. I grew up in that area, used to walk down, and these are comments, so I guess I'm going to go, maybe I might have to drift off, so excuse me, Madam Chair, but just please.
We're just not looking for conclusions. If you have concerns, state them.
I just got some comments, I might drift off, so please just bear with me. That's what I'm asking. I used to walk down there and catch the bus to go to school, and I know Mr. Malik Al, he's always maintained that property, and that building was up for a long time. He used to operate a lot of vehicles out of there, and so I can agree to his comments tonight. They are accurate on what he's went through and stuff. I'm not opposed to what's being proposed here tonight. I also know there's another garage around the corner, which is Brian's Auto as well, which is around the corner, which has been there for a long time as well. What I am concerned about is Al has been a longstanding citizen of this community, and I'm hoping that this potential new owner can maintain the same standards as Al has done in the years, especially with his neighbors and the property management that Al has maintained over these years. He's on the corner. He's one of the houses that you see coming in from Hamilton into West Lincoln, and it's always been maintained, and there hasn't been a mess on the property where you could drive by and notice that it is an auto mechanic shop or auto wreckers or whatever you want to call it or whatnot. So my concerns are for the new owner with whoever is taking place, that I want to make sure that this council, or if it does go tonight, or this township holds the same standard that Al's had for all these 22 years that he's been out there. I know, and this through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Treble, I know there is part of your report stating that there is an enclosure where the vehicles must go if they're to be worked on or storage of some sort behind the property. Is that correct, Mr. Treble?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is correct.
Okay. And does that pertain to, and there's another question through you, Madam Chair, please, to Mr. Treble. So how does it work, Brian? Like if someone comes, drops off a car, and there's a couple cars, they have to be put behind there? Do they be left out in the lot? Like, is there a limit of vehicles that can be left out in the lot in front or anything in that matter?
Through you, Madam Chair, what staff have attempted to do to date is sort of sketch out the areas that it would be available for each type of use, and they're depicted on page 61 of the council package. I haven't had an exact opportunity to sit down and flush that out with Mr. Rivers or the proposed purchaser yet, but the intent would be to sort of spell out the area that is available for each of the different types of uses, customer storage versus a unit that might be used for parts versus, various other accessory type things that would be part of the business. And the goal, though, would be to spell all of that out and make sure that the zoning bylaw and the corresponding site plan attempt to implement all of that so that it's clear up front where the storage can be and where the customer vehicles would be, so that we don't get the two creeping into each other and everything creeping out towards the road.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, I just want to see that same maintenance that Al's had over these years trickle down to the new owners, or something in the bylaw if the that goes down to the new owners that can maintain the property as such. I do want to see that. This building has been up for a long time. It's not a new building that's been being constructed last year. It's been up since when, through you, Madam Chair? 1998. This building has been up there. So it's not a new thing that's come across us tonight. It's been there, and I've seen it for a while. So again, I'm not opposed to this application tonight, Madam Chair. My only concern is that this property with the new owner is maintained the same way that Al's held his standards for this municipality. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Trombetta. Councillor Gannan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I drove by the property yesterday with my husband on the way into Hamilton, and I found that to be very useful. I've been through that spot many times, but hadn't looked particularly at that property. But having looked at the maps in Mr. Rivers' report, and then looked at the ones from the staff as well, it was very difficult, especially when the report alluded all the way through it to concerns about not affecting agriculture. The letters from the various residents around stated clearly their many concerns, and the report didn't address that. I think Mr. Rivers did a better job perhaps addressing those concerns tonight, but the long report that was provided didn't seem to clearly do that. In fact, at one point where it compared the home industry to accounting or bookkeeping or something, I thought was a little bit insulting to the new project that was being proposed. I do think it's very important as we move forward. The land looked wonderfully kept. It looked used. It certainly looked large enough to handle this home industry. But I do think we certainly need to keep in mind as we move forward the concerns of the residents. I think they're legitimate, and they're certainly something that if I lived along that strip I might be concerned about. But I think that the planning way of looking at this bylaw and the teeth that will be in that will be the way to control that. So I think that's been addressed tonight, but I did want to put forward my concerns about the way the report was written. The other concern I have about the report, and perhaps I could ask Mr. Rivers if I may, Madam Chair, I found it very difficult when somebody owns the property, just as, coming across as not being part of the process. Difficult when one name owned the property and Mr. Rivers' report was written on behalf of somebody else. And then also Mr. Lunshoff's name was mentioned in the middle of the report showing something totally different. So I didn't know if that was out of context or an error in cutting and pasting or what was going on with that. But certainly as a new member of council, sort of looking at this and trying to get my head around this planning issue, the report made it more difficult as opposed to easier to understand what the concerns are of the applicant. So, thank you.
There was a Mr. Lunshoff, who I don't believe has anything to do with this area. So, Mr. Rivers, if you might just be able to offer clarity other than the fact that...
Maybe an unprofessional move on my part to have done it that way, yes. But, Madam Chair, to the councillor, my report obviously focused on agriculture, and you're right, almost to the exclusion of potential concerns of the adjacent residential users, and that is a weakness in the report that I will certainly own up to. Professionally, though, my responsibility was to look at the policies that were in place for the land itself, and those policies were all agriculture and agriculture related. I should have, in my report, addressed potential concerns of the neighbors, and I admit that I did not do that. I think I was waiting for tonight's meeting and to hear the comments and see the written concerns of the neighbors. I didn't want to anticipate what those concerns would be, although I think I could have done a better job at that.
Councillor Gannan? Others? So if you'll indulge me, I do have a couple of comments. I've passed that property probably 4 days out of 5 for most of the time that building has been up, as I traveled in and out of Hamilton or to various other places that I worked in. And I do believe that there are other elements of of concern, those of the individuals living in that area, and the impact to that what used to be that hamlet. We removed the hamlet status, I believe, when we were doing our last swap for properties. Was it, Mr. Treble, or was it before that?
It was a little bit before that, Madam Chair.
So I would hope, and there are things missing that in the reports that I saw that concern me, and I would want most specifically addressed, and that is that we're talking about, Mr. Rivers makes reference to a number of things, but he doesn't talk about he limits the vehicles, number of vehicles, limits the expansion for repairs, but there's no discussion about limit for sale. And I'm not really sure whether the zoning today actually allows for that. And I do know that there's a repair shop just around the corner, and I would not want to see this property leaving itself vulnerable to slip into the opportunity to have vehicles for sale. I believe that this is a gateway for the community, for the Township of West Lincoln, and for that reason, the relative lack of problems perhaps that has happened with the existing owners and the existing shop, which was a one-man shop and morphed from a hobby to something more, were easier to keep track of. But I would hope that this is not this being a commercial endeavor would have signage and would have things that might not want to be at our gateway. I must say that it is a little bit unsightly going down the road to see that other shop around the corner that has waving flags and various other things that attract your attention, because it's more of a shop as well as a for sale place. And in Mr. Rivers' report, he said that it would be that this would become, it was a bullet on your presentation that talked about the main purpose remaining secondary to agriculture. I don't know what agriculture is on that property, and might have been just an oversight in how it was stated, but this business cannot remain secondary to agriculture on this piece of land because there's no agriculture on it. It's one of the bullets on one of your slides, Mr. Rivers, and I don't have the privilege of having your slides, so I apologize if I've misstated that, but I took the note really early on. So I don't think this is where it's going to be. And I guess my concern are that there be sufficient satisfaction to the people who have spoken tonight about air guns, impact wrenches, and scrap materials being stored and various other things. And I'd like to see how those are going to be mitigated between the applicants and the residents who spoke out against them. But I do have one concern, and that is that this is supposedly their ancillary to agriculture to some extent, and I would think that that would mean combines, tractors, and various other farm machinery would be the appropriate types of equipment to be repaired in a place such as the one that's being proposed. So I don't want to mislead the public in thinking that it could only be vehicles. It could be, Mr. Treble, and I think we have others on the road going into Wellandport. I believe Matt's Garage. There's a mix of vehicles that go in there, and I could probably point to others throughout. So.
Madam Chair, that's one of the struggles that I think we've all had. In order to allow such uses, there needs to be some provision of service to the agricultural area. So we can't discourage or prohibit that. I think it's safe to say we've all heard the concerns around safety of the traveling public and whatnot. So whatever is going on in such a property would need to be done in such a way as to not take into or not in any way jeopardize the traveling public going up and down Westbrook or Bismarck or whatever roads might be there. But agricultural service needs to be a component of such a business in the agricultural area.
So I guess I'm saying that these are my concerns, and at this point in time, because it's a technical meeting, there's opportunity for the applicant and owner to come forward and satisfy the concerns that are out there between the applicant and the members of the public. And as far as property values, I'm sure that no one would argue that the property values of the adjacent properties, regardless of the businesses that ran there, have not been virtually impacted by the type of maintenance and upkeep that have happened on the property in the past. So the opportunity for buffering and or maintenance of that property to such a degree that it wouldn't be degrading to the adjacent properties would also have to be addressed because no one had worry about the property values in the past or to the extent that the property was used. So I think tonight we hear from the public about concerns that were brought forward that were not addressed in Mr. Rivers' report, and I do believe that at this point in time, we need to have either far more discussion with the applicant and the adjacent property owners, or a second public meeting, but I'd like to see that dealt with in a way that makes a little bit more comfort between the two groups that are discussing this piece of property. So those are my comments, and I'm not saying that they can't be addressed, but I'd like to know that there's not as many of them outstanding. And for the municipality, I guess our biggest thing is that whole idea of it being a gateway. Not formally in that we have gateway properties, but that is a very, very obvious entrance into our community. So those are my comments. And okay, so seeing no other individuals, members of council wishing to make comment. Anyone who spoke this evening, by the way, who has notes regarding what it is they said, if you do have notes with you that you could turn over to the clerk, it makes her job a lot easier when she's trying to ensure that she's captured the essence of what it is you've said. And our clerk, Joanne Shime, would be happy to receive those tonight or tomorrow by email if you so choose. So, this is a technical report that we are considering tonight by Planning Committee, and a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future Planning Committee and ultimately to Council. Please be advised that once Planning Committee and Council have made a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and notice of its passing will be circulated with an appeal period. There's an attendance sign-in sheet which is located on a table near the exit doors, which we would ask all to sign. Please ensure that when signing the attendance sheet at the exit door, that you place a check mark in the column mark for this specific application. So I'll go further than that in saying people who are interested in observing council and or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus miss the opportunity to attend meetings. It is suggested that you watch the township's website for postings of agendas to review items that will be discussed at a council and or committee meeting. The agendas for meetings are posted on the township website at 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting. Additionally, meetings scheduled are also noted on the website for the public to view. If you wish to receive notices by email, it is suggested that you include your email address with your mailing address and your phone number on the attendance sign-in sheet. Thank you. I declare this public meeting completed at 7:47. Okay, there is a technical report on the agenda further into this, as there is for all of the public meetings. If you wish to hear the discussion of members of council at that time, you're welcome to stay. Our third public meeting this evening. I think I just might give you a few minutes for those people wishing to leave, and if members of committee wanted to take that time.